Ladies and gentlemen and lowlifes, it is our outstanding pleasure to present to you tonight the review of Slick Rick's The Great Adventures of Slick Rick. Hey everyone, my name is Rich, and this is Rich Talks Records. Today we are doing a one-off with a lot of asterisks on it. This is the 1988 masterpiece by the one and only Slick Rick, Rick the Ruler, MC Ricky D, The Great Adventures of Slick Rick. This is the first rap review I'm doing on this channel, and it is fitting because this is the first rap album I ever bought. I originally had the cassette, which I would have gotten probably fall of '89. I was particularly obsessed with the children's story video, and I was a Yo MTV Raps watcher, and that whole era, and I'm certainly not the first to say this, but like every artist seemed unique. So whether it was De La Soul or Redhead Kingpin in the FBI or Big Daddy Kane or, obviously Public Enemy or, everybody had their own feel and flavor, and that's what was so cool about rap music in that time. I'll be probably offering up some opinions on that as we go along. But I would have gotten the cassette, and I listened to it a lot, and I absolutely loved it. And then about 6 months later, in a move that I really regretted, but I also was obsessed with the Rolling Stones, and a friend of mine really wanted the Slick Rick cassette. His parents wouldn't let him get it, and I traded The Great Adventures of Slick Rick for Tattoo You. And on a side note, this is kind of a meaningless thing to throw in. I had the same kid that I referenced in my Black Flag video, who's like about speed metal, like you need to have ears to hear it. This like burnout kid. That same kid, the day that I got my copy of Tattoo You, he was like, "What tape is that?" And I said, and I held it up and it said, "The Rolling Stones Tattoo You." And he looks at me and goes, "You wouldn't get any tattoos," and like rolled his eyes and walked away. I've been wondering about that ever since. But that being said, he was right. I don't have, I am unmarked. But such an odd comment, and it's weird the things that stick with you in life. But that has nothing to do with Slick Rick. So anyway, by '93, because I always miss the album. So after I got not long after I got a CD player, I bought this, and so I would have gotten this in probably spring or summer of '93, and it has been with me ever since. There is a deluxe edition of the album that I do not have, but I will be briefly mentioning some of the stuff on there because there's some really, really cool stuff. It's a cool archival release. I should pick it up. There are not enough archival releases of great hip-hop albums. It is not, unlike jazz and rock and roll and some soul music and stuff. It is, for whatever reason, not a reissue friendly art form. I'm not really sure why that is, but I'm sure one could come up with some theories if they wanted to. But at any rate, Slick Rick, born Ricky Walters, his parents were Jamaican. I believe they both were Jamaican, but he they emigrated to England. He grew up in England, and when he was 11, moved to the Bronx. I don't know if with both of his parents, but at least with his mom. And so he has this sort of little foot in Jamaica, foot in England, and then foot in America. Kind of like, though, Canada, kind of like, I'm not a big sports person. I mean, look at me. Do I look athletic? But I am a big boxing fan, kind of like my fucking man, Lennox Lewis. And like Lennox Lewis, a little bit of a man without a country, like Lennox Lewis, wholly unique identity. And like Lennox Lewis, some people don't put either of these guys on the best ever lists for whatever reasons. And it's undeserved, wholly undeserved. They should absolutely be on best ever lists. Both of them. So anyway, in 1985, when he was 20, Slick Rick hooked up with Dougie Fresh, the beatboxer, the world's greatest entertainer, and recorded a single, a 12-inch single, both sides of which are like ridiculously iconic, great, brilliant, kind of eternal songs. The Show, and then Lottie Dottie. The Show kind of suffers a little bit from that period's like keyboard choices. Like it's unfortunately slightly dated and a little wonky sounding. The rapping and what Rick is doing and what Dougie Fresh is doing are amazing. But it was that sort of weird, awkward stage in hip hop where it was moving away from having the live backing band, which is what like the Sugar Hill Records stuff would do with Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. And it was sort of transitioning out of that, but it hadn't fully become the DJ and then eventually producer-driven medium. So it was in that odd middle stage. The B-side, though, Lottie Dottie, is a cappella. So it's just Dougie Fresh beatboxing and Rick rapping over that. So it's an a cappella record. And that is Rick, like, that's him. That's everything he does. The interweaving his favorite songs, the completely stream of conscious storytelling, not stream of conscious storytelling, stream of conscious song structure, because it goes into sing-songy parts, it adheres to the narrative, there's a lot of jokes, there's weird sadness and violence, there's pathos, there's a lot of humor, some of the stuff is played for laughs, some of the stuff is played for sadness, like it's it gives you a lot of colors all at once, and it's one of the most sampled it's one of the most sampled records ever made. And that really started with I feel like a lot of West Coast gangster rap, early gangster rap records got onto Rick. And it's just for there's a period in hip hop where the sampling of it is just like omnipresent. And what's funny is there's a video out there that shows all the songs that have referenced it since. So like there was Miley Cyrus, there's who's the guy who was in Take That? Robbie Williams. Like there's a and do they know Slick Rick? Maybe or maybe not, probably. And then of course the biggest was part of the sing-songy part was turned into the song Hypnotize, which was the big hit for the Notorious B.I.G. So lots of tributes, lots of homages, and then its ubiquity at some point becomes so constant that people are just referencing it, and I would imagine they don't even know that they're referencing it. But it's one of like the greatest hip hop songs ever recorded. It's completely unique, completely out of left field, and just hyper creative. There's an interview with Rick from the BBC that I'll be linking to from 2019, and he just he a couple times talks about painting Van Goghs and painting Rembrandts and or painting Van Goghs and painting Picassos, and that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. These are his paintings, and so broke away from Dougie Fresh and the Get Fresh crew, and started, I guess, sort of loosely the old school crew, which had Dana Dane and this guy, an important part of the record and Rick's next record, DJ Vance Wright. So Rick took in a kind of like punk or kind of like rock music in the 60s. You had an art form that was rapidly advancing. Like every 4 to 6 months, it was the genre was being reinvented, and it was almost being reinvented on an album by album basis by people. And like one of those, for instance, would be like the first LL Cool J record. That's like, and I think LL Cool J's album is kind of the, and he would have been what, 16, 17 when he made his first album. That Radio, that I think ended the awkward stage of hip hop. And famously, the producer credit was reduced by Rick Rubin because it's just super minimalist and very hardcore and perfect sounding. And I think between that and Run DMC, like that sort of ends the awkward stage. But in the time that Rick made this, hip hop went from, you were already like, Boogie Down Productions' Criminal Minded came out. Public Enemy had already done Yo Bum Rush the Show. Ice-T had put out, he'd already put out Rhyme Pays. I don't know if he'd put out Power yet, but so the art form was hurtling beyond itself very, very quickly. And oh God, in the first Eric B. and Rakim album, Jesus Christ, you have the God MC himself. So this record, I think, would have been, I often wonder, Rick, from my understanding, Rick was super perfectionist in making this album and wanted it to be like the best album ever. And I do wonder, as it was a multi-platinum success, and it's beloved, and he's beloved, and it's celebrated. But I do sometimes wonder if its cultural impact would have been held up in a little bit higher esteem had he gotten it out just a little bit sooner, had it predated Criminal Minded, or had it predated Paid in Full. But, he was still working on it. This came out in early 88, and there are 3 sets of producers on it. Jam Master Jay from Run DMC does one song. Rick does the bulk of it himself. And I don't know to what degree DJ Vance Wright, what his role is on it. There is clearly a lot of cutting and scratching, and Rick shouts him out. So, but everything I've ever seen credits Rick solely as the sole author and musical producer of a lot of this. And again, there's a Dana Dane interview where he was in the other room while Rick was cutting tapes together, basically working by himself. So Rick is, a word I've been using a lot lately, he's the fucking auteur of this. But then, he was taking a really long time to make the album. He had signed with Def Jam. Def Jam wanted an album. And they hooked him up. They hooked him up with the Bomb Squad. They hooked him up with Hank and Keith Shockley and Eric Vietnam Sadler. And they got on, and they had a musical rapport. It doesn't surprise me that they would, because they're geniuses, and Rick is a genius. And the geniuses created some unbelievably amazing songs together. And the Bomb Squad. At some point, I'm a very big Public Enemy fan. At some point, I will review them. Honestly, I still find it kind of daunting to take that one on. But the Bomb Squad, especially this era, especially this album, the masterpieces that they made with Public Enemy or for Public Enemy, and the first Ice Cube record, America's Most Wanted. That's like, you can put them up against anybody. I mean, as far as a collaborative group, to me, they're like Holland Dozier Holland level, like creative geniuses, like the hot house environment, just creating all this unbelievable music. And the Shockley brothers are, these guys are incredible titans as far as I'm concerned. So that's sort of the groundwork of the album. So the first song on the record is definitely an idiosyncratic choice. Begins with Rick. The album begins with Rick just saying, here's an oldie but a goodie, hit it, and it goes into just. This is Rick solo producing. It's all him. Just an amazing, really stripped down, just hard boiled, I guess what they now call boom bap, classic hip hop beat. The drums sound absolutely amazing, just tight and hard and perfect, and then lots of scratching, horn cuts, and it's that kind of minimalist aesthetic, and it just sounds amazing. It sounds eternal. It sounded awesome in 1989, and it sounds awesome now. And the other thing is that Rick does is he, I don't know if people really were doing this before him. I've tried thinking of examples and I can't come up with anything. The idea that he had these sort of different personae and different names for them that he would jump in between and answer himself and talk to himself on record. It starts here. There's a, listen up, can I have your attention? And you hear off on the side, there's this constant, he's constantly engaged in like this, like 2 or 3 way self-dialogue and self-response. And that carries throughout the album. And it's one of the many really, really great, unique touches to this record. So the first song, Treat Her Like a Prostitute. It comes out hard. And Treat Her Like a Prostitute is 3 vignettes. And, on one hand, it is ragingly misogynistic. And it's a pretty bold and daring opening to the album. The idea that he is the lottie-dottie, the show guy, and then had put out the Teenage Love single. And the first song on the album is Treat Her Like a Prostitute. That's pretty hardcore. I think that, is it misogynistic? Sure. It's very raunchy, but the thing is, and I will say this, I think that it's so, I don't know, it's so ridiculous that it doesn't feel angry or nasty. There's a playfulness to it, and to use Ferdy Pacheco's term, a piquant naughtiness to it, and saying things that you're not supposed to say. And it doesn't feel mean or nasty. It is just reveling in its naughtiness and in its kind of daring you to find it obnoxious. And I feel like it kind of filters, it would filter out people who are just uptight, you know? And I think, you know, the thing is, I think sexual weirdness or sexual nastiness is something that we in this century have become, has just become something that's like antiseptic, like people are antiseptic to. And you know, I still like a good raunchy stuff. Like I've always enjoyed that, and I've always found it funny. Like, do I believe treat her like a prostitute? No. But Rick doesn't either, for fuck's sake. Like, again, you go and like watch interviews with him, and like he clearly does not think that. There's something to be said for being that loose. And that's the thing, is this record is loose. Like, he's just going where his muse takes him, where his ideas take him. And sometimes it takes him to kind of fucked up places. And but again though, it's like kids telling raunchy jokes. Like it's not committed, and it's not serious. It's wild and berserk, but it's not committed to nastiness. So, I mean, the song is 3 vignettes of why you should treat her like a prostitute, and you know, it's kind of like Andrew Dice Clay or Sam Kinison routines, you know. So, I think that, you know, just because something is more Andrew Dice Clay than Scott Thompson, I don't want to totally demonize it. You know what I mean? I'm all about, not so much, I'm not a big Dice fan, but I still to this day really like some Kinison. I did back then as a kid. And who was the cat? Rick Dukeman? I found him funny. There were routines that Eddie Murphy would do. It turns out Eddie Murphy's a really big influence on Rick. You know, just because I love Scott Thompson and stuff like that doesn't negate that I can also like Eddie Murphy and Sam Kinison. You know, I have to quote Scott Thompson himself, and Thompson went after those guys, and I get why he would. I don't have a problem with him going after those guys either. Everybody gets their say, you know what I mean? And you know, I think that you know, Scott Thompson saying, "I have tremendous respect for filth." Well, this is a filthy song, and it's and to quote Eddie Murphy, it's filth, floor, and filth, and why not? Why not? We could use some filth these days. Why not? The next song would make a more logical first song to an album. I don't understand why Rick, you know, the whole thing is wild, idiosyncratic choices, and who knows why Rick chose to make this the second song, because it's just such an obvious opener. But The Ruler's Back, produced by Jam Master Jay, and but again, a lot of it is very Rick. The speaking in different voices at the beginning of the song. I would imagine, I looked on who sampled. There's not a lot credited, and it sounds like there's a decent amount of live instrumentation. However, credits are scant. One of the only credits, in fact, is punk rock legend photographer Glenn E. Friedman took the very iconic artwork. But The Ruler's Back, one of the things that's cool about it is you have 2 beats. You actually have the main drum beat, which again is kind of like a cousin of Treat Her Like a Prostitute. It's again a very boiled down, cool, reduced, just great classic hip hop beat. But then you've got this like drum machine in the other speaker, like so it's the combining of the two that Rick raps over. And then of course the wild, weird trumpet hook that I guess, is a live trumpet player, and I say that because after a while, the song runs a good 5 minutes or so, and they just let the trumpet player play, but it's repeating the line, but with variations, and it's what a real trumpet player would do. So I don't think that's like looped from something else. And it's just a great mission statement. And you know, Rick's eye for detail, the word that always comes up with him is the storyteller. He's known as the storyteller. But you know, part of storytelling is eye for details, and just when you thought nothing could get better, a news flash concealed in a bright yellow letter. Like, that's awesome. Like that's so, like, that's great. That's great imagery. That's really cool. So anyway, but it you know, sets the record straight on a few things, and a big part of it is just the confidence. And when Rick says, you know, the driver of the mission is a pro, the ruler's back. Absolutely, and you are on board with him. And it's funny, like the first few songs on this record are almost kind of like a little island unto themselves, because nothing really on the rest of the record sounds like these two songs. It's almost like the album begins with a single, and these are like two halves of the single, but like inverted, because Treat Her Like a Prostitute would be the B-side normally. But they're just two wonderful songs, two great grooves that, you know, Rick just does what he does and just sounds, you know, again, he sounds relaxed and confident and just totally in control of everything that he's doing. You know, he's painting Van Goghs, he's painting Picassos. So the next two songs is where the album in earnest really starts. You have the, you know, funkadelic nastiness of the let's take it to the stage nasties of Treat Her Like a Prostitute, and then you know, the mission statement of the ruler's back. Then we get the big single, the one that made me a fan, that had the charming, strange MTV hit video. It's crazy to think that there was a time where a song like this was a hit single. It's weird to think that when fucking Reagan was president, or was Reagan president? No, Bush would have been president. It's crazy. It's still Reagan Jr. It's crazy to think that when George Bush was president, there were aspects of our society that were much healthier. Isn't that weird? Given how terrible things were, it's pretty wild to think that things got that much worse. Anyway, I'm not going to even talk about the Telecommunications Act. I'll shut up. But the children's story is, it's just wild to think that this was a hit single. This led to a multi-platinum album. It's as out there of a hit single as Walk on the Wild Side. It is. The other thing that I didn't mention on The Ruler's Back is there are really, really awesome piano accents happening, highlighting little bits of the story. And the piano is in full effect on this, playing low-end, kind of sneaky film soundtrack, and kind of runs. It makes sense that the video has kind of like a Keystone Cops thing. It just really fills in the kind of sneaky, shifting eye vibe of the entire thing. Also, Rick presenting it as a children's story and voicing the children is such a great, unique touch. The song, I mean, it's a story about, you know, I mean, you've probably heard children's story. It's an amazing narrative filled with, you know, bursting with great details, and And then at the end, when the story's over, and Rick's delivery is so deadpan and dispassionate, and while there's humor and like the kids are sort of making fun of him, the the flat deadpan quality of the voice is very serious, and you feel the weight of the tragedy and waste. And so to mix that with humor, and when the kids are sort of making fun of him after he says goodnight, there's this sort of rising eerie synths in the background, like creepy mist floating in, and yet, contrasting over that, he shouts out Vance Wright and is like, "Rick the Ruler presentation, crumbs." So it's just such a cool, unique mix of moods, and you feel each one of them. So this is virtuoso stuff, and it's a hit single. Like, amazing. Like, in anybody else's hands, this would have been like a cool or great album track. But he somehow turns this narrative that doesn't really have a chorus into this amazing song that is relatable. That however, I would have been, 11? That an 11-year-old in the suburbs could be affected by and super into, and was influential on legions of great rappers. Amazing. One thing about the children's story video is Rick, and I'll touch upon one of the other videos when we get to that, but Rick, everybody, he's known for the jewelry, the extensive insane levels of jewelry, but also the gold teeth and the eye patch. And he didn't look like any other rapper. Like, he doesn't really look like anybody. He doesn't look like any other pop star or really anything. He is just such a, and especially back then, I mean, he was like this really skinny beanpole, and just such a fascinating figure, so intriguing. And the eye patch, if in case you don't know, is because when he was a kid, when he was an infant, he got shattered glass in his left eye. So sometimes he just wears glasses, as you can see on the album artwork. But yeah, he normally does wear an eye patch, and that is the reason why. So, just, it was another layer of what was intriguing about this guy. The next song is its sort of even darker cousin, and that is, and that's where the Bomb Squad first shows up, and that is The Moment I Feared. I remember, after Rick, we'll get to sort of what happens with Rick briefly later on, but when he was out on work release, I remember Fab Five Freddy interviewing him, this would have been 91, and referring to this song, the next song, The Moment I Feared, as being like a motion picture. And it is like a motion picture. It's definitely Bomb Squad-y in that the scratching and the rhythmic punches have their heft and impact and level of funkiness and intensity, and also their use of voices, like their and this is all throughout. I mean, it's obvious with Public Enemy, but it's all throughout America's Most Wanted. The Hank Shockley's ability to create such sophisticated sound staging to create the mental picture. I mean, it's radio play mastery, Orson Welles stuff that the Bomb Squad was able to achieve, and with such sonic clarity that none of those details get lost. And again, it's a weird winding tale that winds up, the that winds up with the protagonist in jail. You know, a weird kind of loose morality, kind of like the weird loose morality of Treat Her Like a Prostitute. But just, again, just a fascinating, serious story. And there's weird little humorous touches. There are things about the way he treats the narrative that I love. I love that the fact that there was a media circus around the protagonist's crime, that he treats that as an afterthought, that's meaningless to him. Like, that's dealt with in as an aside. Like, there's just such a richness to details and to the storytelling. Again, this is masterful stuff, and the attitude of the character as it changes. Like, when the girl comes on to him, he's excited. When he's getting jumped at the club, you know, I felt, you know, I was in pain, so ashamed. Like, so every mood switch has texture and detail to it that's specific, that makes it that much more vivid. Virtuoso stuff. Amazing. So the next song, so we've had two very kind of serious or more serious songs. The next song is is very Bomb Squad. It's the most like Nation of Millions feeling song, including the Let's Get Stupid or Get a Little Stupid, which pops up in Public Enemy's Party for Your Right to Fight. But it's just, and it's interesting, like how Rick treats the trumpet in The Ruler's Back is just the sound of the trumpet, and it's the trumpet player playing, and it's very natural sounding. The sax on the hook that's in the verses, or not on the hook, but just in the verses, is modified and compressed and slightly alien sounding. Like, it's interesting what the Bomb Squad did with a horn as opposed to how Rick treated it. But it's Let's Get Crazy. It's a cool, fun party song. The lyrics are great. I mean, there's, you know, it's cool hip hop braggadocio. Rick is, as always, super confident. There's, you know, he does his what I love when he answers himself or talks to himself. I find that kind of just endlessly cool. It's funny because his persona and his confidence, I was thinking about other people that he influenced, and you can certainly see it in Ice Cube. You can see it in all these other people. But I started thinking about Redman, and I started thinking about how much Redman was clearly influenced by Rick. And funnily enough, I was looking up interviews getting ready to do this video, and sure enough, there's a clip out there of Redman talking about how important Slick Rick was to him. And it was just funny because, like, as I was sitting there thinking about it before I saw this, I was like, wow, there's a lot of Slick Rick in Redman. So it's just funny. It's funny how these things work. And then, of course, I mean, one of the big ones would be Snoop Dogg covered Lottie Dottie. And that's a very beloved cover, and it came at a time when Rick needed the support and kept Rick's name out in the public. I'll be honest, musically, I think it's interesting, but I was never that big of a fan of Snoop's version of it. I'll just be honest. There was a little bit of a sourness to the tone of Snoop's version, whereas Rick, you know, there are just so many moods, and there's a playfulness to Rick, and I prefer the playfulness of Rick to the sourness of Snoop in that instance. So I figured I would mention that. But like I said, a lot of people love Snoop's version. Like, I'm not putting that down at all. It's just a matter of preferences. But Let's Get Crazy is a cool, great party track of a song. Interesting, weird rhythmic pattern. It's the Bomb Squad really being the Bomb Squad. And then we get the next song, which ostensibly, if this was a vinyl album, which I never heard it. I mean, I heard it as a cassette, so it would have been the end of side one of the cassette. Is is Indian Story. So Rick singing, crooning, does the Davy Crockett theme, which I remembered from when I was a kid because they would play it on the Disney Channel. And then later on, crooning "I'm in the Mood for Love." And wow, Indian Story. This would get him in all sorts of fucking hot water today. I mean, I can't even imagine somebody putting a song like this out now. And was 2 Live Crew even around? I mean, this is raunchy. I mean, this is on a multi-platinum, like, mainstream record. Like, it is as, Edwin, God bless you, I salute you, sir. It is as motherfucking gonzo as, I mean, it's somewhere between, like, 2 Live Crew and the Frogs and Sam Kinison and the Honeymooners routine that Eddie Murphy would do. It is, and some of the stuff on Funkadelic's Let's Take It to the Stage, maybe even some of Prince. Was Scarlet Pussy out by then? Like, it is manic and wiggy and weird and fucking gonzo as fuck. It is hip-hop nig heist shit. Oh my god, it is. I don't even know what to make out of it. There's no other song like this. You sort of have to grasp it, like, and like the weird, like, synth string bass line. Like, God, it's wild. It's an X-rated cartoon of a song, but, like, not cartoon as in cartoonish. I mean, as in, like, if Tex Avery and like the old school, like, Warner Brothers guys actually made, like, a porno cartoon, like a legit fucked up XXX porno cartoon, and also about Native Americans. It's so fucked up. And, like, Rick's voicing of the girl, and, like, all of it is so fucked and so wild, and would just get him. I can't even imagine if somebody put this song out now. If Lizzo and Beyonce go back and re-record songs because of one word that people don't like, I cannot fucking imagine what would happen if somebody put a song like this out now. I don't even know. But again, that's the thing. Rick, see, some people, and I'm not going to name names, some people aren't really artists. They are the faces of large PR companies. But what the PR is about is they are PR for themselves. So they are the face of the thing that they are PR for, which is of themselves. And it's very, very through the looking glass, man. But there's not really art. I mean, the art is like just this fucking byproduct. It's a hamburger they have to burp out to keep the train rolling, and it's nothing more than that. It is just product, right? And but Rick is a fucking artist. He's painting Picassos. He's painting Van Goghs, and this is a very dirty, filthy, floor and filth fucking work of art. But it is a work of art. It's a weird work of art, but it is also the voice. This is what a free artist does. This is what happens when somebody is just following the muse. They will go to weird fucking places. They will go to socially unacceptable places. They will say things that you are baffled as to why they would even bother doing that. But in Rick's case, it's like it's jolly and you can tell, like, you can feel the joy he takes in saying things that he's not supposed to. And that is contagious. And there's something wonderful about that. I have tremendous respect for filth. And this is, Indian Story or Indian Girl, an adult story, I always get, is filth of the finest caliber. It is, and eventually I will do a video about these guys. It is Frogs level banana bonkers fucking gonzo, you know, sex nasties, as George Clinton would put it. It's awesome. I love it. I loved it when I was a kid. I love it now. And also, when I was a kid, it served, and this would horrify people, it served as an important piece of sexual education in some ways. I had never heard of crabs. For one thing, there are so many things I learned from the song. So that was also helpful. So in its own way, it served as an educational piece. And then we flipped the theoretical record over. Though I heard it on cassette, so flip that over and be back in 1 second. Side 2 begins with A Teenage Love, which I would have thought would have been a Rick production. Turns out it is the Bomb Squad, in the least Bomb Squad production of all times. So A Teenage Love would have been kind of the lead single for the record. Funny note, I remember there was a MTV back in the day special that's probably now over like 20 years old. And I think it was Bill Stephanie told the story that Rick wanted to wear a fur coat in the video. And they did not have a budget for a fur coat. So somebody, I don't know if it was the director or Rick, raided his grandmother's closet, and it was actually either his or somebody's grandma's fur coat. That's what he's wearing in the video. And I love that story. That there was a brief trend of hip hop guys in New York showing up in like the Latin Quarter wearing their grandma's borrowed fur coats, and part of why I always found that funny was, though I grew up, a world away, my grandma had not only a fur coat, but she had a coat with a fur collar that, when I was a teenager, she was much tinier than me, even though back then, I mean, I weighed 124, soaking wet. But there was about 2 years of my life where I could fit into that thing. And so I used to wear that going out sometimes. And I would always feel like I was in tribute to Slick Rick. So I was doing the very thing many years later. So anyway, A Teenage Love, I think the obvious model, especially with it being a single, the obvious model would be LL Cool J's I Need Love, right? However, it would break down to very similar synth, very sort of like Casio kind of preset sounding early, kind of mid-'80s synth sound. However, LL's song is great, and it was pioneering for its time. And it took, yes, it might have been mercenary in its aims, but it took a lot of guts for LL to put out this ballad, And I give him full credit for it. And he pulls it off. He totally pulls it off. This song is interesting because it runs the risk, and as an 11-year-old, it would make me I would get all emotional about this song. I one time I compared it to my mom's childhood favorite, Old Shep, and I remember her saying, "Oh, is it like she wanted to hear it and hear other parts of the album?" And I'm like, "I'm not playing you an album. Like, I don't know how the fuck I snuck an album whose first song is Treat Her Like a Prostitute. Like, bam, right there." And nor was I was never going to run the risk of letting her hear Indian Girl. Jesus Christ. I would have been in all sorts of trouble. So anyway, my parents, I grew up in certainly at the time in '89, I grew up in a very censorious house. I wasn't allowed, not only was I not allowed to get Black Sabbath or anything like that, I couldn't get, or Ozzy, because he was a devil worshiper. I couldn't get Jimi Hendrix tapes, because Jimi Hendrix was on the bad list. And so my parents' censoriousness was very, very arbitrary. a couple years later, I had real problems getting a copy of Jane's Addiction's Ritual de lo Habitual. Not because of Ritual of the Habit, like drug habit. That wasn't what bothered them. Not even the cover, because I presented the censored First Amendment cover to my mom at Coconuts, or no, Musicland. I could get like one tape every 2 weeks back then. I would save up my allowance money. And not even that. It was because the words de lo, which is Spanish for of the, of course, sounded like the word devil. That was it. She would never... That was it. No chance. So weirdly censorious, randomly censorious. So a couple years later... By 92, 93, all the censorship was lifted. My parents decided we're never going to win. We give up. And by 92, I'm blasting "Fuck the Police." Do you know what I mean? Like the changeover was pretty drastic. But I asked my mom many, many times, like, why in the hell could I not get Axis Bold as Love? But I was able to get an album. The first song is called Treat Her Like a Prostitute. Like, what the fuck, Mom? And she never did have an answer. I've brought that up many times over the years because that is endlessly interesting to me. But I wasn't going to run the risk. Boy, that was a weird diversion. Anyway, back on track. Teenage Love. What's interesting about Teenage Love is Rick goes, it's teenage love. It's awkward. It's melodramatic. It's embarrassing. And Rick goes for it. He paints the different scenarios and the heartbreak and the outsized emotions, and he does it dead serious. He does it like he plays it straight and treats it like he's giving advice to the kids. And what could be really embarrassing and obvious really works and takes on a lot of weird meaning, and it's a great song. He wrote about kind of hard subject matter, like the awkwardness you feel during a breakup, like your first significant other. And he took awkward subject matter and dove into the awkwardness, which makes me love it even as an adult. I love it all the more. It's one of the reasons I can listen to it as an adult. Also, with Rick's interpolation of songs he likes, he totally starts crooning "Do You Know Where You're Going To?" Diana Ross's "Do You Know Where You're..." Is that the theme from Mahogany? It throws that in. Like, I love it. It's so, like... So even when he's playing it straight, he still throws this in at the end. It's one of my favorite things about him. The next song is like one of my of all the music I have, and all the CDs are down yonder over there. Of everything I have, the next song is maybe like one of my permanent top 10 or top 20 songs ever since I very first heard it. I love this song like it's Mona Lisa. The demo version on the expanded release is fascinating because while it's not nearly as produced, all the component parts are there. And it just the idea that he had mapped it out like that, because Rick's stream of conscious compositional style, this is the ultimate. It's about 4 minutes and it contains a world. The Dana Dane interview I saw actually shed a little bit of light. I have thought about this song more than I've thought about, like, all sorts of things in my life. Like, this song captures my attention in ways that very little else does. So, it begins with the weird skit of the different personas, I guess, meeting each other and kissing the hand of the royalty. Like, it is so weird. And then it kicks into that drum beat. And this is all Rick. This is all him. He did this top to bottom. There's no credits to anybody else. I think his friend Trevor does a brief vocal cameo. This is like the apex. You are like, this is the prism of Rick rapping to himself and jumping in and out of characters, and not just, voicing their characters. So this is like radio play acting. I mean, he's acting out all the parts. And also I have to say that drum sound, that fucking tight snare is one of the best drum sounds. It just slices through. It's so like again, like this is something, as I have now said about X-Ray Specs and Love's Decapa, compulsively listenable. I can listen to this song again and again and again. It contains like a world within it. So, Rick is at the pizza shop and getting a slice of pizza, and he runs into a girl. Her name is Mona Lisa, and so he sings the song Mona Lisa, and they just have this weird extended back and forth conversation, this really weird flirting, and they argue a little bit, they disagree, they don't trust each other, but they're still bantering. It's so idiosyncratic, and there's, again, so many little details. Rick spelling out his name. Jesus Christ. The whole thing, it's so compulsively quotable and listenable and awesome and clever and charming and funny and smart and just fucking great. Like, you are in the pizza shop. Like, you are in New York you're in line next to them. Like, you see it, It is so vivid. And then Trevor comes in and pulls Rick out to the limo, and they leave because there's a party to attend with some real mature women and some more of our friends. Also, the part where Rick goes into speeds up his flow as he's being hustled into the limo and they're speeding away, and he kind of goes into like a double time syncopated. He's doubling himself, going like, so as the cab came, he thrusted me in it, and as we were going in, he's just doing little syncopations of like that you barely hear but are accenting what he's doing perfectly. Little touches like that. I mean, that's what this album is full of. It's full of these. It's just so musical and so, I don't know, fully composed. It's so just fucking awesome. I love it so much. And then Rick, so, it could be, the song could be viewed as slightly misogynistic or dismissive or whatever, but it isn't, because I mean, in some ways, I mean, you could see it that way, but like, he clearly really likes the girl and wanted to be liked by the girl. Dana Dane filled in the story. There was a pizza shop and there was a girl named Angie. I almost don't want to know this, but I do want to know this because I've thought about this song so much over the years. But there was a girl named Angie that wouldn't give Rick, wasn't into Rick. And so he wrote this song. Rick as Mona Lisa, singing in a falsetto. Mona Lisa standing on the street crying as the limo speeds away with everything that could have been, the unpromised dreams and hopes, unfulfilled, unrequited passion driving away, and Mona Lisa's standing crying on the street. And Rick as Mona Lisa in a falsetto sings Walk On By, with then like synth strings coming. This, like, it sounds so fucking nuts. And none of this should work. None of this makes any sense. And yet, God damn it, you're there on the street corner with Mona Lisa, like, oh, and you're thinking of the girl that never called you back. You're like, oh, we could have had something. And like, what the fuck? Why does it have this effect in these like synth strings? Like, and then it's still not over, because then there's like some scratching and it goes into like what would be the approximation of a band playing a funk jam, because it goes back into the sort of the riff, the dun 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 dun, but answered with record scratching, who I'm assuming is Vance Wright, and just these punches of guitar. I guess that's what it is. Like, amazing. What the fuck? What the fuck is this song? There's never been another song like it. It defies every rule of songwriting. Why? Because he's making art, Why? why is there not a chorus on Children's Story? Why is there this very sophisticated, like, not synth, but like jazz bass solo at the end of Teenage Love? Like, why do these things happen? For the same reason that there's flute instrumentals on Black Sabbath records. That's why. Because they're making art. They're making art. That's why. You know, this isn't working within the constraints of a genre. This is making art, and this is just a brilliant fucking guy who it has all sorts of crazy connective thinking happening and is just following the muse. Mona Lisa's a goddamn epic. Like, it's such an amazing song. And again, just one that I've always gone back to, and every single time I've ever heard it, I think about how just fucking awesome it is. So, there you go. Oh, one note about the wearing the fur. What did my strictly Catholic Polish grandma have to say when she saw me wearing that? She said, and I quote, "It's very nice." Oh, good Lord. Anyway, just makes me laugh. So anyway, the next song is Kit, What's the Scoop? And is Kit, What's the Scoop a Bomb Squad? It's gotta be, right? Oh yeah. So it's sort of halfway between what a couple songs that come next on the record and The Moment I Feared, Children's Story, where it's a really weird story in that Rick is sort of playing a version of himself, talking about himself. There's like a kidnapping heist. It is, his crown is stolen. It's a strange tale. And, I don't know that it necessarily is as awesome as the two songs on side one that it's similar to, but it's still awesome and still really cool and moves the record along very well. But, you know, just, again, really idiosyncratic stuff. Like, he would go to these kind of weird places, and that's what I find so interesting about this record. And then we go into one of the true masterpieces. I mean, you know, he's painting Van Goghs, he's painting Picassos, like, truly. And that's, I think it was the last single for the record, Hey Young World, which has a really odd video. I don't know what the hell. It's like 5 different videos spliced together. The Children's Story video is classic. Teenage Love is classic. Hey Young World is cool but weird. Anyway, Hey Young World is another song that I have thought a lot about over the years. In the early 2000s, I had it on a mixtape that I had just made for the car. And what's the song? Is it Marley Marl and Biz Markie, the End Racism? I forget the name of the song. Or is it Erase Racism? I forget but I had those two songs next to each other. And Hey Young World is just, it's like about 5 minutes long, and it just feels, it feels like an epic. It feels like 10 or 15 minutes, and I mean that in a good way. I meant to mention at the end of Children's Story, there's, Rick coming from Jamaican parents. There's almost kind of dub reggae-ish of Rick bouncing his voice back and forth across the speakers, like just his voice echoing and answering itself. And this is almost like Lee Scratch Perry does a hip-hop record stuff. Like, it's beautiful lingering piano runs. I don't know if those are, I guess it's sampled horns, but they're all kind of distended, and it's a very, very melancholic pensive song. And it's interesting because the Hey Young World, the world is yours. I mean, the world is yours. I don't know if he got this from this, but I would assume so. That's the Globe and Scarface. So also, is it one of the first hip hop Scarface references? It might be. But it's just such, like, what is ostensibly a word to the youth and being inspirational. Like, it doesn't have the moral rectitude or the sense of righteousness that Ice-T or Chuck D or KRS-One would have had. It almost feels like the subconscious desirings of, like, a Nino Brown or a Tony Montana, of wishing that they didn't have the life that they had. It almost feels like a fever, like maybe like a dreamscape of somebody who is living a life on the outskirts and wants to go straight, or doesn't want to see their kids go the way that they have gone. It takes on, there's almost not to get too whatever but about this or anything, but there is kind of, I guess what you call it, it feels metatextual. It feels like there's some sort of story beyond the story. To keep referring to the Dana Dane interview, he said, that Rick wrote that song kind of for his mom. His mom is in the video. That made sense. Because, as he said, they were wild, and he was doing something because he didn't want to be wild. But, and that's interesting. Like, I think people who are, what I would say, who are kind of legitimate outsiders, don't really want to be outsiders in a way. Like, you wish you could go straight. You wish you could not do the things that you're doing, and you're trying not to. But, at least up to a certain point, if you can survive that, it's wonderful. But there's this sort of thing where you just fuck up a lot, The other thing is there are endless samplings of Lottie Dottie throughout this album. It's employed constantly, but again, it's kind of employed in this weird, slowed down, distended, distorted way. And so you have the inspirational verses and then the "we like to party." Like, it's just, it just feels like, it's just such a weird, like, just again, like this weird dream sequence. And that being said, when Rick lands some extremely solid points, like, don't admire thieves because they don't admire you. And when he gets down to, make your own money, that's brains not spite, and a man never loses a fight in God's sight. And when it comes to sort of the moral of the story of, because righteous laws are overdue, and that is the message that the ruler Rick threw, and it's true. You're like, fuck, that is true. So when Snoop or Redman or when other people have talked about how Rick moves them, it moves you because I don't know, because there is something relatable about it. Somehow, some way. It transcends cultural differences, it transcends time, it transcends locations. It's just an amazing, it really does kind of feel like it just was sprung out of the subconscious. And but met with kind of, for 1988, shockingly sort of sophisticated production. It's as dense as anything as the Bomb Squad did. And it's just it's tonally and emotionally and morally ambiguous in, like, the best possible way. You feel all of the different push and pull of all the different instincts. It's brilliant stuff. It's just, it's another amazing song on an amazing album, because he's painting Picassos, he's painting Van Goghs. Okay, so the second to last song is a Bomb Squad production, which is interesting because it feels the most, if Teenage Love doesn't really sound like the Bomb Squad all that much. Parts of Teacher Teacher do, but feel anachronistic for 1988. It has kind of that sort of period of like Houdini or The Show kind of synths that would soon kind of be gone forever from hip hop and never get like a retro comeback. Or so musically, it's probably the least successful song. However, what carries the song off again is Rick, because as a rhyme structure, as a song, it's fucking outstanding. And what he has to say about himself as an originator and an original is 1,000% on the money. And the other thing that's interesting is how between The Moment I Feared and Kit and this, there's a lot of paranoia. It's interesting if you want to play armchair psychologist. There's a lot of paranoia and a lot of constantly keeping an eye out. And so yeah, there's an interesting sort of, as much as Rick is ridiculously charming and really funny and weirdly vulnerable, like there's also this kind of this paranoia in the background. And it's probably the least song on the record to me. However, it's still awesome and great. You know what I mean? It's just, on an album like this, you're talking about, degrees of greatness. And then we get to the last song, Ultimate Bomb Squad. But Bomb Squad, Vance Wright does some amazing scratching and cutting, amazing. But Bomb Squad at their most futuristic. And that is the epic. This album ends with a fucking blowout. It ends with the masterpiece on an album full of masterpieces, Lick the Balls. God damn it. The horn blast for a while served in the 90s as the coming back from commercial music for Yo MTV Raps. And it sounded modern and cool and cutting edge then. I personally think it's just timeless. I think that it always sounds modern and amazing. To me, this prefigures like that horn blast mixed with the little guitar sample. I forget, is it Funk Incorporated, or I forget the name of the group because I had looked it up on Who Sampled. And it was just interesting that the Bomb Squad just used like one little sort of guitar scrink from the record. I don't know where they got the horn blast from, but to me it sounds like stuff that DJ Premier would be doing. To me it sounds like, to me it prefigures everything from like EPMD to what DJ Premier was doing to it prefigures Mobb Deep. I'm not saying they bit from this, but just it just sounds of a piece and modern. And there are little moments where Rick, as they say, flips the tongue. So it kind of prefigures in little quick moments. It kind of prefigures some of what Das Effects was doing. It's one of the things in the 90s was, there would be the rap songs to like show that you had skills, right? So, just kind of showing off your verbal and lyrical dexterity, right? And that's what Lick the Balls is. It's just, to me, it's like, it's as much as it prefigures the 90s, again, it just sounds timeless. There's a little bit of distortion on Rick's voice. He just sounds low and mean and serious in a way that he doesn't on the rest of the record. He's just on top of this music in such a commanding way, and he just sounds amazing. And again, the music and the weird disembodied backing vocal thing that they cut in, like, just amazing and weird and random and awesome. The ability to take these little divergent little elements, these tiny little fragments, and make them these sonic features that clash up against each other in such cool ways. Just fucking amazing. But held together with the guitar, with that guitar figure. Like, it's just, I don't know. I love it. It's just one of those things, like, I've listened to it so much, and it sounds like it's flown in from a different record. It sounds like something from another planet. And in such an awesome way, you know? So it closes out the album in incredible style. This is a masterpiece. This is an amazing album. And Rick was such a singular, creative presence. And, you know, there's an outtake on the deluxe edition called Snakes of the World Today that's kind of as forward-thinking and as weirdly layered. It's the closest thing to Lick the Balls. I don't really know why they would have left that off. You could swap it out with Teacher Teacher. It's a really, really, really phenomenal song. If you like this album whatsoever, go check that song out, because it is really, really, really well worth your time. Trust me on this one. And so the album went multi-platinum. It leaves the question, like, well, what comes next? What came next was Rick had a bad legal situation. I'm not going to get into that. There's what happened. There's his side of the story. It's not great. Rick wound up going to, and I don't like getting into sordid stuff. I think Rick might have feared for his life, and that might have, his actions would have thus been what they were. Could it have been handled differently, handled better? Yeah, most likely. But that's not the point of this video. Rick went to prison for what I think all total 7 years, because he had immigration problems too, because he wasn't a U.S. citizen. Yeah, he eventually became one. He made 2 albums in jail. The first one, 1991, The Ruler's Back, is the one that I've heard. The single was I Shouldn't Have Done It. It's dispiriting. This was an effervescent, confident, brilliant guy who was idiosyncratic and also, like, sensitive, for lack of a better word, and could follow his muse and go down all these weird paths and make connections in both songs and music that other people just would truly never think to. I mean, again, this is pre Prince Paul. Like, Prince Paul would have been in Stetsasonic, I think, at this point. Like, this is the sophistication in terms of sound painting and using the musical elements to do this. Like, Rick is thinking way beyond what a lot of other people were thinking about at this point. And you have this artistically uninhibited guy, and then you put that into the legal system, and put that into somebody facing jail and having it being locked away. And the Ruler's Back, which I haven't listened to in a long time, it's dispirited. It's sad, and it's frustrating, and it's a free voice that is not free any longer, and he's not uninhibited anymore. And I found it really hard to listen to and didn't enjoy it. And I would have heard it way back when. And then I never checked out the next one, Behind Bars. I've never listened to that one. And then the next one, he's only made the 4 albums. The next one was in 1999. He got out in 97, and that was The Art of Storytelling, his 4th and final record. That is we're now over a decade removed from the debut, and it's a completely different artist in a lot of ways. It's a sprawling album. It's a dense album. It has lots of cameos. It has a round robin of big producers at the time. It's there are a lot of people who really love that album and swear by it, including my friend Van swears by it. I really like the record. I haven't spent enough time with it that I would feel comfortable talking about it, especially compared to this, which I've listened to who knows how long, and predates a lot of the other music that I've ever even listened to in my life. I sort of don't feel comfortable reviewing it. At some point, maybe I will, because I mean, it's very, very, very strong, and Rick is doing a lot of the Rick things that you would want him to do in a mature way, and it's awesome. There's a single from 2019, Can't Dance to a Beat that don't have soul. That's good. But what's the Midas Touch is, I guess, the B-side. Midas Touch is fantastic. I wish Rick would make another album, because Midas Touch is indication that everything that he ever was is still very much there. And there's still, there are some freestyles out there that are also like, yep, that's the guy. So, who knows? Maybe we'll be lucky enough to see him paint some more Van Goghs and some more Picassos. But, he did that here. He did that here. And this is a masterpiece. And you should check this album out. It's amazing. Whether you like rap music or not, you should check this album out. I absolutely love it. Swear by it. So anyway, I think that is pretty good for this video. And I'm going to get going. And it's a very busy day here. And I've been filming this a little as I was stealing away a few moments. So I hope you've enjoyed all of this. And, the YouTube things, like and comment and subscribe. And, thank you for watching. And I hope everybody's okay out there. And I will see you next time. Bye.
You just finished watching Rich Talks Records. Now the anticipation for the next episode begins.